First item is a pledge of allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Commissioner Tocco. Please vote to adopt the agenda. Thank you very much. The next item is approval of the minutes. Move to support it. Please vote to approve the minutes from September 9. Thank you very much. Next item is number public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? One more time, anybody under public participation? Seeing no one, will close public participation. Item 6 is department recommendations. We have a cost share agreement with Oakland County Road Commission to Quinta Road at 14 Mile Road traffic signal and sidewalk ramp. Director Santo is here to speak on that if necessary. Anyone have any questions on this item? It's routine cost share agreement between Oakland County. All right, if not, please need a motion to approve. Motion approved 6A, the traffic signal.
Sauger made one.
Sauger and Elizabeth.
Okay, please vote to approve. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if there's no objection, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 6B through 6H.
Does anyone have any questions, any of those items?
Mr. Chair, if we could get some information on when these projects are going to start and become the completion date.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Some of these are currently on the PPP program, which is the pavement preservation program. Let's see here. Item C, which is the cost share agreement with Sterling Heights. That's in our current 16 Mile Road concrete pavement preservation program. We are yet to do that stretch, but that is on our current program, just as well as D, which is the HMA, hot mix asphalt pavement preservation program. The Traffic Operations Center obviously is a grant money to facilitate the operations of our Traffic Operations Center. The F is the State Infrastructure Bank Loan for Bruce Township for the M53 33 mile connector. 28 Mile Road Bridge will be started probably within a few weeks, be constructed by the end of the year. And the cost share agreements with Oakland County, they are for work, I believe, for the rest of this year. The intersection of DeQuinta Road at 14 Mile Road and DeQuinta Road from Long Lake Road to Burning Bush. Those are 2 Oakland County projects that we are participating in.
Commissioner Tocco, are you clear?
Yes, just if I could. With regards to the bank loan, could you give us some details on that bank loan, please?
Yes. We are Act 51 agency as Bruce Township. We basically take out a loan and we have a cost share agreement that the township pays us back for that. So we run the loan through us as an Act 51 agency and they repay us for that loan.
Okay, so there's no cost to the county then?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions on these? It's a motion to approve them in their entirety. Please vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon. Item 7 is budget reviews of Public Works. Public Works Commissioner Miller's here. Steve, you want to give an overview first? And
I will give a very brief overview and then turn it over to Mr. Baker and Commissioner Miller. The Public Works budget can be found on page C58 of your budget. You'll notice that the total budget being recommended for 2018 is just over $6.5 million, which is about a $166,000 decrease from the 2017 amended budget. One item of note is that through various reorganizations that Commissioner Miller has taken to the executive's office during 2017, there's been a reduction of 1.5 employees. So you'll see a reduction in the full-time wage line item and also a reduction in the part-time wage item, and then of course all the associated benefits flow with that. But that is an item of note that Commissioner Miller or Mr. Baker can speak to in more detail. The overall operating budget, so if you look at supplies and services, conferences, repairs, in vehicle operations, there's a net increase of $1,000 over 2017. The internal service line item, you'll notice that that's increased by about $45,000. The largest item in that category is the internal service chargeback from the indirect cost allocation plan, and that was about $36,000 higher than the previous year. So that's kind of what's going on there. You should also all have an email from the Commissioner's office with a note for myself. She's proposing an amendment to her recommended budget, and that's what that email is all about. She'll speak more to that. I believe she also has a video. But all good news, in my opinion, from the Public Works office. So
It's nice to have someone submit a budget to us for a change.
I'll turn it over to the Commissioner Miller and or Brian and go from there.
Commissioner Kleinfeld first, please.
I'm not sure what email he's referring to. I don't know if everybody else.
There was a copy on your
Oh,
desk as far as
oh,
that.
okay. There's no, that's different than what you just showed. Let's see.
It should say forward budget request SCETA.
It's under the graph there.
It's the same thing? Okay, thank you.
This one, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's very good news to report. One, we turned a budget in, and it was on time, and even better news that expenditures are down and revenues are up. So as Steve said, expenditure budget is down about 2.5%, and revenues are up 2.4%. So what that means is a net reduction on general fund impact of 8.2%. So the general fund bottom line is improved by 8.2%, and I'm not sure of many other departments that can lay that claim, but we're proud of that. A small portion of the savings is budgeted for the continuation of the countywide drain match grant program, which the commissioners approved just a couple months ago. So we started this, as you know, this year with a portion of the savings we achieved, and want to continue that as well with continued savings that we've achieved. And that program, as you know, allows communities to match the county funds and incentivizes them to assist, allows us to assist them in their drain projects in the community. And a lot of those drains haven't been maintained or improved for many decades. So Steve mentioned we're down 1.5 FTEs, one full-time engineering tech and a part-time or 0.5 clerk typist. So staffing is down. Now, as Steve mentioned, per the email, since the budget was submitted, we are proposing an additional savings, which has no net impact on the general fund. We're requesting a 0.5, so a part-time position in the wastewater division, and that's to bring some of our SCETA services in-house.
Why don't you explain what that is?
I will. SCETA is a public works computer system that remotely monitors and controls sewer levels. And not only sewer levels with the sinkhole, we can remotely see how much flow is going through the sewer, whether we need to store some flow. It also allows us to track our pumps. Are our pumps working? Are they on? Are they off? So right now we have a contractor doing most of that work. And by bringing that in-house, we can not only save money, provides greater control, and also allows us to cost-effectively manage our SCETA, ongoing SCETA improvements. So again, the wastewater disposal district pays for this. They're going to save about $75,000 by bringing this in-house. We need to amend, if you're so inclined, the general fund budget. I think it's around $51,000 as an expenditure. There's an additional revenue from the wastewater disposal district, and then that district is going to save $75,000 as a result. So all in all, we think it's a positive, and rather than paying a contractor $80 to $100 per hour, we can have a part-time position do a lot of that work for us and save everyone money. Lastly, I just want to briefly talk over the last 10 months. Commissioner Miller has accomplished a great deal, which she will touch on a little bit this afternoon. In terms of some of the general fund budget efficiencies, we've reorganized the entire department. We've eliminated several top positions, which has saved money and established new reporting structures within the office, and we now have division managers, three key division managers. We eliminated a number of vehicles, including take-home vehicles. Surprisingly, it doesn't seem that revolutionary, but we're actually partnering with all the other county departments, which I understand wasn't done completely in the past. For example, HR, we're following all the HR policies, and we're using HR to hire our employees. We're working with information technology on digitizing our records and beginning the acceptance of credit cards over the counters. Treasury, we're allowing Treasury now to invest our funds rather than staff doing that on their own. Corporation Counsel, we're working with them to reduce our lawsuits and pass expensive outside legal fees. And finance, we are actually transitioning to the finance department's accounting system, which has not been done in the past for some of the drain funds. And we're also inviting our auditors in for the first time to take a look at our books, and we are acting like any other department in the county, and we're opening, and as many of you know, we're holding open and transparent drain meetings that many of you have attended as well. So with that quick overview, I'd like to turn it over to Candice Miller.
Thanks, Brian. Let me just say, Brian's doing a great job as my chief deputy. As you know, I sort of poached him from Sterling Heights. He was your finance guy, so you've been listening to him giving finance reports for a while, Joe, but and Rob. But anyway, so we thought we'd have him sort of give you the overview of the finance. I hope you're all seeing this video. Yeah. We on your monitors, okay. We thought, oh, we'll try to make a professional presentation here, so we came with the bells and whistles, and also we have our annual report. I hope you all have a copy of here. That I'm just going to touch on. I don't want to spend too much time here, as much or as little as you want me to, but it basically just sort of goes through what our first 10 months in office have been. Obviously, our major project has been the interceptor collapse on 15 Mile Road, and I'm sure you've been following how that's all going. That was at the first, everybody said it could be a 3-year project, could be a $150 million project. So it is essentially fixed now after 9 months. And it was a $75 million project, of which we got $5 million grant from the 2 different grants, a total of $5 million from the state. We are just finishing the filling everything in, our pre-cut, and then we're going to be a restoration of 15 Mile. And we hope to have 15 Mile Road open. We said by the end of Christmas, although now it looks like we might beat that time frame as well. So we're not exactly certain, but things are going very, very well. So we're excited with that. And obviously that's taken an incredible amount of our time. However, that's not the only thing we have going on in our department. Some of you have been out when we've been doing drain inspections. For instance, there's 3 huge storm drains in St. Clair Shores that run from East Point in Roseville, discharged down into Lake St. Clair that were built in 1959, 1960, have never been inspected. We are inspecting those, as you all know, and one of them we started inspecting. We found in East Point there was an entire apartment complex that had been, their raw sewage had been entering right into this storm drain. So we think 250,000 gallons for a year, for about 35 years, directly into Lake St. Clair, which is, in very technical terms, bad. Very bad. So, and we're finding some other things. We're looking for illicit connections. We're doing all kinds of different storm drain inspections. As Brian said, many of you have been to the drain board meetings. I think we've started with about 8 enclosed drains in Sterling Heights, which are smaller storm drains, but they run along all the principal roads, Canal, Shaner, Mound, Van Dyke, et cetera, and we're looking for illicit connections or sedimentation or what have you, degradation of the pipes. We're doing that sort of all over the county. One pilot program we hope to undertake here, which I'll just tell you a little bit about, we're very excited about, as all of you know, as you see what's happening down in Toledo with their drinking water supply because of all the phosphorus in that. That's not particularly inherent to that. All of these agricultural drains have a lot of that going in. We're actually looking at doing sort of a pilot program where we do a filtration system, almost like a filter on a cigarette, I guess you could say, where it would have the ability to take out phosphorus and other contaminants before it entered into the Clinton River and then ultimately Lake St. Clair. So we're trying to, I hate to use the term think outside the box, we're trying to be creative about what we can do for water quality in every way. I was here in August, and you were very gracious to approve an amendment to our budget so that we could start a match, 50-50 match program with communities for drain maintenance and drain cleanout. And just since August, we've actually done projects, and hopefully that's in your agenda packet as well, but we did one in Ray Township. We did one in Macomb Township. We've done several in Harrison Township. We just finished one in Chesterfield Township. That their board just approved another $10,000 so we could do some more in Chesterfield Township. We're talking to Shelby Township the other day and others. So, and we've opened it up to everybody in the county. We have several very large drain projects that we're going to be announcing, not today, but shortly in Warren, that are big, very big. And we think that those will be very well received and long overdue, like decades overdue. So a number of different things. And I guess the last thing I would say, if you just take a look at the front page of this, and Chairman Smith was out there as well. This is one of the GLRI programs projects that we are managing. There's about $8 million worth of those in the county. Those are the Great Lakes Restoration Initiatives. So we have one on the Clinton River Spillway. We've got another one in Macomb Township with what they call the McBride Drain. That's right outside their township hall, and then that sort of meanders through the center of Macomb Township. This one is the Partridge Creek Glody Drain. There is actually a Partridge Creek besides the mall. There's actually a Partridge Creek. It was all overgrown. Chairman Smith said he used to play golf out there. In fact, we found a couple of golf balls literally while we were out there, so I knew he was telling the truth. But we have cleaned that thing out. It is so beautiful. You can't believe the wildlife and the nature and everything that's coming back there. And so we're going to be talking to the county a little bit about perhaps putting a walkway or a bike path through there. In fact, just on that note, I will mention one other thing, and then any questions that you might have. We are looking at everything that we have jurisdiction over in the Public Works. I mentioned to you that we found 3 different properties that the Public Works owns that we're going to put up for sale. For instance, the Public Works, the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District actually owns the piece of property on the northwest corner of M59 and Garfield. And you know, in Macomb County, it doesn't get any better than that. So we've appraised these different sites that we have. We have one in 21 in Sugar Bush. We've got another one in Sterling Heights on just off of Ryan by 19 Mile. And we're not in the land business. So we're going to sell these properties, put the money back into the drainage districts, and use it for drain clean out or whatever we need to be doing that for. But we're really trying to look at everything that we have as an asset. And so just as one example, and I'll conclude with this, is what they call the Sterling Relief Drain, which runs parallel between 16 and 15 Mile Road. And it was 5.5 miles long and about 300 feet wide. And obviously we need to maintain the drain, but we don't need all this land. And we've been spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars just to mow the grass there. So we've been talking to the planning department here, and long story short, we now actually are starting to get together some design work to actually build a bike path along there, which would almost start from the beginning of our county, and it would intersect with Freedom Hill, which of course already has a bike path all the way down to Metropolitan Beach, which will always be known as Metro Beach in my mind, whatever they call it now. So anyway, we're trying to think about what we have that we could better advantage the citizens of. They own these assets, and let's try to use them as we can. So anyway, I thank you for your time tonight, this afternoon. So if you have any questions specifically about any of the items on our budget, we're willing and able to hopefully answer those questions for you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Very good, thank you. Does your department plan on, at one time Public Works did a illicit discharge program. Largely it was funded through state and federal grants, but those have went away. Is there any of that ongoing, is that anything being done now or planned to be done in the future under your administration?
In a very big way. In a very big way. We have undertaken that already this year. As I say, the examples that I talked about, the 3 storm drains in St. Clair Shores, we are checking all of the one, for instance, called the Stevens Drain that runs from East Point down, it discharges by Blossom Heath, actually. That's where we found the apartment building. In addition to that, on that particular storm drain, we've taken almost, I want to say, I think 80 to 100 samples for illicit connections. And we have the ability to run the samples at our Chapaton pump station, so we've been doing that like crazy. So we're doing that with every drain that we inspect. That's a critical component. It's a marquee issue for us, is to make sure we do the IDEP, the illicit connections. So all these storm drains that we're looking at in Sterling Heights, now I don't expect to find any illicit connections in those kinds of drains, but we're still going to check them anyway. And so we are absolutely doing that on every drain that we're inspecting.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions from the commissioners? We have, yes. Yeah. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. First, I never thought I'd be relieved to hear we have a $75 million problem with a sinkhole, but it's a relief considering what it could have been. Yeah. And, you know, I'm pretty sure I express a lot of appreciation for the entire board for the work you've done there. The speed in which you've done it, the professionalism in which you've handled it, the cost savings and that you've considered in moving that forward. Just a couple of, and also on the overall budget, I'm glad to hear that you're actually looking for ways to reduce costs while doing quite a bit more with the department. So that's very impressive, and I appreciate that very much. Just a couple questions, and you may not know the answer to this, but you know, why does the commission own those original properties? I don't realize this was before your time, but do you have any idea of why we acquired property on M59 and that sort of thing? Is there a history there?
I think what happened is, for instance, in the property on Garfield and Hall Road, that was built when they put the Garfield Interceptor up. Now, how many years ago was that? Yeah. And they bought it because they were probably staging their equipment, et cetera, when they were doing that. But that's many, many years ago, has gone by. So, in fact, if you go by there today, you see Frady is staging all his equipment while they're doing M59. Yeah. I called them and said, you know, we own this land here. And he said, well, we have to stage here. MDOT promised us we could do it. Anyway, I got a bit of a deal with him, so he's paying into mid to lease that property. But of course, we give nothing away here, right? But as I said to him, I said, look, man, we want to be good neighbors. We want M59 to hurry up and go. So anyway, but now I have my for sale sign. He's like, you can't sell this. I'm still staging. I said, yeah, you know, maybe you can work a deal with a buyer. We'll see. But anyway, we are not in the land business. Yeah. The other piece of property that we have at 21 in Sugar Bush, they actually bought that because they were going to do a corrosion control project, which we are very interested in. And this, what happens is, ever since the Clean Water Act, sort of an unintended consequence to that, the Clean Water Act was good. However, in the sewers all over the country, you have now a large amount of what they call H2S, hydrogen sulfate, which is very acidic, and it degrades the concrete of these sewers. It really speeds up their life expectancy in a very bad way. So you have to inject ferrous chloride in to dissipate this gas, okay? So anyway, they bought that property because they were going to do that. So I'm saying, listen, we want to do this, but why should we be having this, these tanks with this chemical right at 21 in Sugar Bush Road? There's neighbors around there. Plus, now with Cabela's, that property's going to go crazy. You could put a nice restaurant or something there. I didn't think it was the best use. Anyway, long story short, I won't go through all the details, but we talked to MDOT, and we got them to the correct answer, that they are actually going to give us a bit of property right at the ingress going northbound on I-94 at 21 Mile to use that for our ferrous chloride tanks. And so we're going to get that at no cost. Now I'm going to sell that land, put the money back in the drainage account.
Are those pretty much the only parcels, or are there numerous other parcels, or is it just a small handful of parcels that you're aware of?
Well, obviously, the one in Garfield is the big one,
Yeah,
right? I
right.
mean, that's
Very
worth,
expensive.
let's face it, multi-million dollars. I can tell you offline what our appraisal says it's worth. I don't want to say that too much publicly because we intend to try to get our big buck for it. But the other one is what they call the Hawk and Drain in Sterling Heights off of Ryan there. And I don't really know why they bought that, but it was bought for this drain. But it's not necessary. There's no reason that we need to have that. And they've had it for decades. There's some other things. They've got actually a couple of different leases that they've leased with different, for instance, Comcast, which is on Van Dyke in Sterling Heights, is leasing part of the Sterling Relief Drain for their parking. I'm not really opposed to that. I'm just telling you it's there. And, you know, there's actually a billboard on a drain that is being leased. We're looking at all this stuff. I don't have every answer yet, but, you know, I'm a picker. I'm a
Yeah.
digger.
Does
I've been
it-
digging, trying, what is this now?
Does the money from the sale, for example, the M59 property, does that go to the county, or does that go to the drain district?
It will go into the MID, the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, because the MID bought that land.
Any chance we could get 75 million from all these sales?
You know, one thing on the MID, one other thing, you said it's actually a less price. However, what we are doing in addition to fixing this, we never want to have another sinkhole, obviously, there or anywhere else. And so we actually have a SAW grant where we are inspecting all of the MID, as an example. We've got a number of different SAW grants. There's 17 miles of underground in that one drainage district, and we have inspected, we're almost completed now inspecting the whole thing. And as you might imagine, there's other issues. Nothing to that extreme, but issues that have to be addressed. So, you know, we're going to start putting these things on a normal maintenance project, right? Capital improvements program, so you're keeping up with these kinds of things. And we're really inspecting all the various drainage, in the drainage districts, what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So we don't have that happen again. And we can hopefully pay for it without raising everybody's rates. You know, just make sure we're maintaining it all.
Thank you. I just have one other question, if I may, Mr. Chair. And that is actually more for Steve, if I could. The question is regarding, I look at the budget and it shows the decrease for this upcoming year, which I think is fantastic. But it does show a substantial jump from the 2016 to the 2017. You know, it goes from 5.339 to 6.677. Is there a reason why there was such a substantial jump in
Well,
that
again,
year?
the numbers you're looking at for 15 and 16 are actual numbers versus budgeted numbers. So there's been a number, at least this year I know, and going back into 2016, there were a number of vacancies. So you'll see primarily the full-time wage line, you know, the budget is quite a bit higher than the actuals, mostly due to vacant positions, would be my guess. I mean, if you look at, you know, the operating budget for the whole office is not that large, it's 100,000 or something. So it's all in the wages. So you got, you know, vacancies, you know, you got budgets versus actuals.
Okay, so there was just a lot of vacancies in that year.
Yeah, and
and that-
you'll probably see this, we've seen this in other departments and throughout the course of the budget cycle here, where you won't necessarily, it looks like an increase, but budgetarily there isn't an increase. It's just, you'll see the same thing next year with the clerk's office, for example, because of the vacancies happening this year.
There are problems with the clerk's office? No, I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner
you.
Majak.
Thank you. Thanks for coming here, Candice, and I think I speak for the whole board. Thanks for putting together all the drain meetings. We've all learned a lot. We really appreciate being a part of that and appreciate what you're doing there. But one question here, you said that we're leasing land, public works land or easements to these private companies. Are we getting paid for any of that?
Yes.
Okay, and that's
Yeah,
going,
they
where
have
is that going
contracts.
into? The Public Works Department or the Drain Fund or something?
It goes into the specific drain fund. In the case of this billboard, that's on one of our drains. It's going into that particular drain. And so, yeah, they're accounting for it properly.
Okay,
The
so
thing
you're
is
looking
whether
to
or
make
not
sure
we should
everything's
be.
legit.
We're looking to make sure that everything's okay. It does
Okay.
appear to be okay, although some of these things, we're going to renegotiate the price
Okay. Okay.
a bit.
Let me just ask one more question. I know I mentioned this in a public meeting before. The governors had that proposal or plan that said Michigan short billions in infrastructure. Okay. I understand the road part, like when Brian Santos comes here and we're spending $60 million a year approximately on roads. 51% of roads in Macomb County are in poor shape. I'm just wondering, what does that mean in terms of like infrastructure below ground? You know, does it mean, I mean, outside the sinkhole, you know? So you guys go and look at these drains and storm drains, and do you come back to us or the county or taxpayers and say, hey, we got to spend $100 million, you know, on new drains and cleaning that? So what does that mean? I understand roads because it's above ground and
Right.
it sort of has to be done, but I don't understand the numbers. What does that mean for sewers in your department in terms of the needs for sewers or costs?
I think, Commissioner, the best way to get a handle on that is what they call asset management,
Yeah.
which is a big buzz term now throughout the industry. But we have now begun that in our department this year. So we have a very snazzy piece of software that we call Next Gen, and we've been feeding Next Gen with all of the, as we do all, for instance, even the storm drains, all these storm drains, as we're inspecting the storm drains, we are developing the software that's compatible so that we can put all of the information that we found, photos, shows different.
Hard copy information.
Hard copy information.
Which is a national thing, that this is new
Right.
throughout the whole country, this software.
Right,
Right, okay.
that's right. So we're doing that, and we're doing that, I mean, as I said, we're doing 17 miles of inspection in the mid. That's all going to go into our asset management. All of these, for instance, Chapaton, we've done a complete schematic of that in 3D, et cetera, that we fed all into this asset management. And one of the things that we've got this program now doing, not only, I mean, it might say, okay, here's a generator here, you know, and this was the age of the generator. Here was the last time the generator was fixed, except the thing now has the ability to spit out a work order to our crew and say, time to check this, time to do this, rather than, geez, I hope Joe remembers to go look at the generator again, you know? So you can use the technology to really help with that. But as far as expense, I mean, a lot of this stuff is very old. And in fact, talking about Chapaton, you know, you've got these different drainage districts. The mid is 11 communities. The Chapaton, as Veronica knows very well, is what we call the 8.5 mile drainage district. And that is St. Clair Shores, East Point, and Roseville. And I've met with all those mayors and said, you know, these are the places that we spill. In other words, this is where we have discharges after the heavy rain. And we need to either separate sewers, or we need to build bigger retention here. So we have got to have a master plan for all of this. And it's going to be expensive, but we have to make a plan. We're not going to fix it tomorrow, but it can't just keep going on like this every
Right.
generation.
Right. But
And-
it's going to take time. There's a lot of sewers. It's really big, and
Yes.
I still have to meet. That's Vince Astorino,
Yes.
who deals with that. I still want to come to your office to look at that.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean exactly? Are we talking about like new pipes, new systems to clean out the water? That's the thing that I'm trying to grasp.
It's
Concrete of pipes. Are we talking about machines that
well,
clean the water?
in the case of the 8.5 mile drainage district, for instance, St. Clair Shores is about 75% separated. So they still have about 25% of their city that needs to have their sewers separated. East Point is only 20% separated. So they have a long way to go. Roseville is maybe, 70, 80% separated also. But of those, as we've been talking to them, every time they do any kind of construction project now, they will be separating if they're on an individual, particular street. They need to think in terms of green infrastructure that can be helpful. But it's going to be an expensive fix. There's no way around it. And so we've been talking to them about actually going out, trying to make a plan of what we'd actually have to do and how much would it cost. Because I think, if you've been following all these articles in the Detroit Free Press, it had a very extensive week of articles. You might have seen me talking about Jim Nash, who's my counterpart in Oakland County. Good man, good friend. And Oakland County is our neighbors. They're our friends. But guess what? Friends don't always dump their sewage on the other friend's head. And we don't like that. So they have to do something. And I think the MDEQ is now looking at actually raising the standards for what's allowable from these retention basins to be discharged. And if they do that, we, and also Oakland, everybody in the Great Lakes Basin, certainly in Michigan, would have to upgrade. I mean, you force all of our hands, which I'm in favor of.
Okay. Yeah, again, the governor comes out with those numbers, and for myself and for residents, it's hard to understand below ground and separation and pipes. I think road construction concrete is easier to grasp, and I think easier to grasp with the numbers, I think, but, so this is a work in progress for your department. You think in a year or two, you might come back to us or the public and say, this is what we got.
Yes.
And this is what it's gonna take to do what we need to do in the county. Am I right on that? Or?
Yes, you're right. We are doing that, actually. We are putting together a request for proposal for a master plan for the whole county.
Gotcha.
So that would include the 8.5 mile, the mid, and quite frankly, we're also looking at the northern part of the county. Because, as you know, you've got Washington Township, who's building their own sewage treatment plant, which only services a quarter of Washington Township. So, your ability to develop beyond that is hindered, obviously, because you don't have the underground. And that's so for a number of those communities up there. So you've got about 3 or 4 of those communities now going to build their own little sewage treatment plants. Is that the best way? I don't know. So we've brought all those township supervisors in and talked to them about, should we create another drainage district here together? What is the best way to do this? Or do we continue to run the 26-mile road interceptor up? How much will that cost? That's all going to be part of this master plan. There's never been really a master plan in Macomb County for underground, and we should have one. If there's ever been a complaint that we've all heard a million times, is when you start driving a bit north and you run into all this traffic and everybody says, why didn't they have a plan for these roads, a better plan, right? Because now you can't even move, when they built all these subdivisions, which are beautiful, right? But there was, and I think from an underground standpoint, we still have an opportunity to do better planning and allow the local communities to control whether or not they want to have development or whatever they want to do. But we need to know what the capacity would be for them.
Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank you,
coming here
Commissioner.
today. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, thank you, and just, I enjoy hearing what you got to say, because you know what you're doing.
Well, I don't
So
know,
far,
Merv.
okay. You know, I
We're
always was
trying.
curious about the place, and I bring it up every time, is the area between the Red Run Drain, between Van Dyke and goes over to Chicago Road. And you can get out of your, I got out of my car the other day and walked down there, and I know it's one of your projects, but has somebody looked at that already? Because you can throw anything in there you want, hide anything in you want, and nobody's gonna see it.
The Red Run Drain is really is really where the George W. Kuhn, that's the big retention basin that's in Oakland County, that's where they discharge into the Red Run Drain. So we are looking at how we could monitor that better for various kinds of contaminants that might be in there. At the same time, at some point, we got to get Oakland County to stop. Their system is designed for every time there's 1 inch of rain, it spills, it discharges. Well, it feels like every time it rains, you have 1 inch practically, so it's discharging all the time. But yeah, we do need to look at that. You've got a couple of very large drains, as you know, in Warren. Bear Creek is another one that we're going to be that we are looking at. As I told you, we're going to be announcing a couple of big projects. Some very large enclosed storm drains that run along your main roads and under 696 that we've hopefully going to get a SAW grant and have an announcement here shortly on a big one there again. And we'll be checking them for everything.
Okay, my other question is, the pipes you got going down 15 Mile Road, the new ones, is that gonna be covered up?
They are almost, you mean the bypass? They are, as we speak today, they're almost gone. That we've been demobilizing for the last several weeks. And that bypass was 2 black parallel pipes that ran along 15 Mile Road. They're almost all gone. And the pumps and everything are almost all gone. We're trying to figure out if we're going to sell the pipe, or should we keep it, or what we're going to do with it. So I think we're trying to figure out what we're going to do as far as the pipe. But they're pretty much gone. This weekend we'll be closing the intersection at 15 and Utica Road because we had to close it last January, where we had to put the pipes under there so we didn't have to keep that road closed all these months. So this weekend there'll be a road closure. We've got it up on our website. Hopefully everyone's aware of it. We've told all the businesses to know that's just going to happen this weekend. We'll finish pulling those black pipes out of there and reconstruct that intersection. And that'll be the end of the black pipes. It'll just be a bad dream. I will. You know, one other thing about the black pipes, I know they just look like black pipes, but that's what saved us from having to discharge into the Clinton River. And I know I mentioned this before, but I always do because I think it's important that we can tell our constituents. We, since January 1st, did not discharge 1 drop of raw sewage into the Clinton River with that interceptor because of that bypass worked so well. And we had 2 different instances and very heavy rain events where we were literally within an inch of having to discharge, which would have been an environmental disaster, and that did not happen.
Great job. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I see no one on the list. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Always good to hear from you.
Thanks
and,
very much,
your
Commissioners.
team.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Commissioner Toga, supported by Leon Gillette. Please vote. Thank you. Motion passes. 7, Michigan Works. Thank you.
The Michigan Works budget can be found on page D10. I'll make very, very brief comments and then turn it over to the Director of the Department, Chris Reilly. The total budget's just shy of $4.5 million, about a $70,000 increase over the prior year. You know, no new positions from the 17 amended to from the adopted to the amended. Very small changes in operating and those kinds of things. So my comments are very brief. This program is entirely federally funded. So there's no general fund contribution to this program. And I'll just turn it over to Chris.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Couple updates from last year. First of all, our program year runs July 1 to June 30 of each year. And we just began the 3rd of our and final of our current 3-year contract. So looking forward to the snow and also a new RFP. So I have every intention of having that contract renewed and then be before you again next year. So some of the 18 goals that we are looking at this year, we do have a reduction in our funding in which to serve our local area. We are looking to enroll 240 people, adults that is, into classroom training. Adults would be that are identified as economically disadvantaged. Also, in terms of the classroom training, we're looking at 121 dislocated workers. Those are individuals that we identify as being unemployed and unlikely to return to their last occupation. On the other side, for folks that classroom training may not be the right path, we also, of course, run an employer-based training or on-the-job training. On the adults, we're looking at 63, and the dislocated workers, 73. And we are waiting to see if the state wishes to reactivate a program called the work-based training for special populations. We have a request out that should they reactivate, we are hoping to receive $220,000. And we use those funds for, again, employer-based training in which we help aid job seekers looking for work. We try to match them up with employers, and then we identify the needed period of time for training to be successful at that job. With what we've already operated, we cap those contracts with the employers at $4,500. What we do with that money is whatever their starting pay is, we will reimburse up to 50% of the individual's wages during that defined training period. Some of the things we're looking at doing right now, we are in the middle of a transition, and I mentioned this last year, and we're really at the final point of implementation, is we are now operating under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which replaced the Workforce WIA. Don't ask me why I just lost the I, but we are implementing that. Unfortunately, as I've notated under my key performance metrics, I like to generally give you an idea of where we're at in terms of our performance measures. Unfortunately, the federal government has not yet released proper measuring data. So we are operating at a moment right now where they are not giving us official performance figures or any means for us to locally calculate that. It sounds a little funny saying that. I hate to express that, but that's unfortunately where we're at right now. They have changed a few of our performance measures, so they're pretty close to what we did before. They've added a couple new performance measures. And generally what we're measured in would be that of once someone has completed a training program and we have exited them to employment, we look at, are they working? Is it related to the training? And then how far out? We usually measure in the past 3 quarters upon our exit date. Now we're looking at a full year. So we gather data at the 2nd quarter after we exit and the 4th quarter to see, are they working? It used to be we would measure the same people and check them for retention. Now it's a wild card. They pull whoever to see, are they working the 2nd quarter, and then people they pull, are they employed in the 4th quarter after that exit? We also check that if people started a classroom training, did they end that training and earn a credential? So did they have successful completion through school? 2 measurements that they are adding that they have not unfortunately fully defined to us is a measurable skills gain. So upon completion of whatever that training program is, did they earn measurable skills? And that's what they aren't defined as what, not so much what is a measurable skill, but how do you measure that, to what extent? And then also an employer satisfaction survey. So we are, one thing under WIOA, we had the upper hand already, is our relationship with those employers and how are we assisting with their employment needs. Long-term goals that we've been working on, I've been working with a plan with our local state of Michigan parole office to work with folks that have been received back to our area and assist them with their job search and get them into employment. Because as you all know, the best thing you can do with someone that comes out of the system is get working. If they don't find work, they can find themselves back into the system, and we certainly want to avoid that. So we've been working on some development techniques, job readiness development techniques, and overall orientations with the parole office to help them with that process, to work with those folks that really want to go find some work. I don't want to say we derailed, but our process has been slowed. Unfortunately, our Roseville Career Center, which is at 12 and Groesbeck, had a fire last May. So everyone in that building has been displaced. And we cohabitated that building with the state parole office. So it took a few months for everyone to really get situated in their temporary spots. So we're now back on track on that. And we're coming up with means to provide them that data. And many of you have heard me speak before of our Veteran Employability Boot Camp. We are borrowing from that model, which has proved very successful, to do a similar employment workshop, couple-day intake to really get them up to speed on their resume, identify the gap that they're clearly going to have on a resume they're interviewing, and other matters like that. So they have a very good chance to go out and find work. And then along with that, we are working on, as we always have, we do have access to fidelity bonding. If you're familiar with that, it's, if you will, it's an insurance program for employers, which takes some of the concern off if they're working with someone that had an issue on their record, that if anything should happen at work, if things were stolen, things were damaged, it covers that expense. And then, of course, there are tax incentives that we provide information on. There are tax incentives available for veterans, but also for ex-felons. So if they hire someone, they can, the employer can apply for that and get a tax incentive.
Can you speak to the budget numbers as they relate to the decline in enrollment? Employment's down, so your numbers coming into the department are down. How does it affect your budget? Speak to more directly about your items in your budget that have been affected positively or negatively as a result of the increase in employment.
Yeah, we are definitely seeing a, I don't mean to yell at everyone, I want to make sure you can hear me too.
Yeah, fine.
As the economy does get better, our budgets typically do go down. You know, when we had that 10-year recessionary period, you know, we clearly had a much, much larger budget than what we see today as the economy continues to improve. Especially during the 08-09 period of time, I saw my staff go from 37 case managers to 63. And, you know, now we're coming back down to the norms that were in the low 40s. So we are expecting for the next couple of years, as Michigan's unemployment and as the local area, the unemployment number goes down, we do see less funding come into this area. They do distribute the funds throughout the state based on the needs of the local area. So they look at, you know, Detroit's a separate area, Wayne County, less Detroit is an individual area. We combined with St. Clair County is our service area. So they look at what the unemployment number is, and that determines how much funding we need over the next service area. And there's 16 in the state. So we are seeing that decline. And we're also keeping an eye on the proposed federal budget, which identified that our area could potentially, as presented, see a $2.4 million decrease in funds, $1.9 million to Macomb County, and then the difference to St. Clair County in the funds that we have really become accustomed to seeing.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions on the budget? Commissioner Gillette? Yeah. Commissioner Gillette. That's why I called on you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. This may be somewhere in here, I'm not finding, but how many participants from Macomb County went through your training or services in this most recent year that you have numbers for?
Solely Macomb County?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have that in these figures. I'm very happy to get that back to you.
Okay.
Like it's interesting because, you know, being a Macomb County department, of course, but my day-to-day, we see this as a whole service area. We do have those figures. I did not readily provide just the Macomb. I'm happy to get that back to you.
Well, how many for the area that you're responsible for, regardless of where they live? How many people went through the training or participated in that?
In 2017, the year that we just completed, we enrolled 505 income challenged individuals in classroom training. Now, as I was talking about this year, we did have a goal of 350. We enrolled 505. For our dislocated workers, again, the folks in our area that had lost their positions.
Is that the primary service that's provided by your department, essentially?
I would say that's probably our most talked about, the most identifiable.
Okay.
The mission of the department is solely to get someone to work.
Right.
And people will come to us because they are unemployed, because they have a low-paying job and they need to better for their family, or they want to do a career change. So a lot of that is answered by what's their current credential like. Do they have a credential? Is it a credential applying to what we identify as a declining occupation? Or does it just simply need to be updated? One of the easiest examples would be IT. So we kind of go to that a lot because that is an identified gap, their skills gap. But it could be just as simple as they walk in and they are not comfortable with how to interview properly, or they have a resume that's working against them, and just cleaning that up alone can get them back to work.
So that would be people that are included in that 500 group. They're looking to take advantage of that kind of assistance.
The 505 are people that solely were enrolled in classroom training.
Okay, so these other type of services are services in addition to those.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the other question is, you noted that the budget's been going down as a result of the, thankfully, employment going up. But according to the documentation, we have 2 more people with the department than we had in 2016. Is there a reason why we're having more staff being added while the needs are going down?
We did have some additional grants that we were running that are not in place right now. And we also want to provide not only a good service to our individual job seekers, but we also wanted to be sure that we provided to our employer-based customers. And the expansion included some folks that were paid directly out of the TANF funding. So our plan here called for so many enrollments based on the dollars we received, and that's based on the average cost of training per individual. It was able to be worked out based on the money actually spent that was able to incorporate then the additional staff.
Okay. I'd be curious about the total numbers that come to the department, because if we just do that 500 people, roughly 500 number, that's like 9,000 people per person, $9,000 per person if you take the budget and divide it by that 500. So I'm sure there must be a lot more going on than just that. So
yeah,
if there's a total number of Macomb residents that they're taking advantage of these services or benefiting from these services, that would be helpful, so I could see what that boils down to per person help, so to speak.
I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you.
One thing to help clarify, hopefully not confuse, I'll add to, hopefully with your answer, 2 of the grants I mentioned that were in play for a good amount of the program year that did end. One was a national emergency grant, and the other was, again, this work-based learning for special populations. And we enrolled people in those classes or in training under what those funds would allow. And if it gets to the point that that fund has been maximized out, we would then also offset that with, they were eligible under several grants, so we could possibly take money out of a different grant. So where it might look like 9,000, it's not that a single person used entirely the adult fund. It could have been partially the work-based training fund and then a difference in the adult too.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else on the budget? Very good. Thank you for the detailed information. We appreciate that. We'll see you later.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Need a motion to receive and file the report. Moved from Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. All those in favor, please vote. Or not. Thank you very much. Andre, you want to take over?
All right, thank you, Mr.
Correspondence first, yeah. Correspondence 8A through E, I need a motion to accept in their entirety. Okay, moved and supported by Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Toko. All those in favor, please vote.
Any questions on the correspondence?
No, not from you. We'll take no questions from you, Commissioner Gillette. No, please go ahead, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
I'm just a question on the correspondence. I think this is under that section, the application for industrial facilities tax exemption certificate. Is there anybody who can explain what that is? What's that? Well, I'm reading the letter and I still don't quite understand it. Reading the letter and the application itself. But is there someone who can give us an overview of why we're receiving this and what?
Because the county receives, not only the locality receives, is giving the tax credit to the community or the business, but the county also is noticed by these things as they go through, because we receive a share too. So actually, we're giving up a portion of tax revenue by the fact that the local community is doing it.
Right.
And rarely, in fact, in all my time here in Macomb, I've never seen anybody object or the county say no to something like that. Technically, we could if we really had an objection. We could raise some issue about objecting to the tax credit being given for that community because it affects our budget. Some counties have, I know, do object to that, and they watch that very carefully, but
So we don't have to technically vote on whether or not we want to waive those taxes. We just receive the correspondence?
we receive, which are, we don't vote on it, which is, it's a formality.
Okay, what if we don't want to waive our portion of the county taxes?
Well, we could object to it, but I think it's, I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm confused by that as well. I mean, I'll vote yes to receive and file it, but I just wonder what our role is.
You know what, what I'll do is I'll get well, I'm not finance chair, but we could, ask the finance chair to produce a report of, similar type of, tax exemptions that the county, foregoes as a result of local DDAs, TIFAs, and so forth across the county.
Yeah, it would seem that if we're going to waive our,
Steve Smigiel probably has,
if we're going to waive our collection of certain taxes, that we would have a vote specifically on that, I would
I
think.
guess I would suggest a couple things. I think
He's
on
happy to
this
help.
month's Finance Committee agenda, you'll see the apportionment report, which is an annual report of all the taxes and values throughout the county. There's a section in there that'll show values and the number of exemptions by community.
Okay.
And then I think Kristen Seeloff will be here, the equalization director, and she can explain that whole process in a little more detail.
Is that the point when we actually vote on whether we want to waive those taxes?
I don't believe so. You're adopting the apportionment report, which includes all of those exemptions.
So we never actually vote on
I
whether or
don't
not
think
we
so.
want to?
Yeah, Kristen will be able to explain that in more detail.
Okay. All right, well, I guess I'll vote to receive and file this. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the motion's been made and supported to receive and file it, please vote. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. 9A, Department of Human Services. Director Smigiel.
Hello again. The DHS budget is on page C28 of your budget document. Really, this is involves costs associated with the Social Services Board. So, as you know, each county in the state has a 3-member Social Services Board. 2 members are appointed by the Board of Commissioners. 1 is appointed by the state of Michigan. And they have a twofold purpose. 1, to run the local office of the Department of Human Services, which deals mostly with emergency needs. And in our case, in other counties that have medical care facilities, they also oversee the operations of, in our case, Martha T. Berry. What's included in the general fund budget are basically 2 activities. One's administration, one's county emergency. The administration is really meeting per diems and memberships for the 3-member board. So they meet at least once a month, and they receive per diems and mileage for that. So that's what's in administration, as well as there's an association of county social services boards. And so there's a membership fee that we pay every year for that. So that's about an $18,000 budget. That budget has been the same for this whole department for many years at about $72,000. The county emergency budget is, and foster care is somewhat the same, although there's nothing been spent there for a couple of years. But county emergency is a safety net where if an individual goes to the DHS office and applies for state aid and they are not eligible or their needs exceed their eligibility, then there's this amount that we've budgeted in the general fund for many years that those folks can take advantage of, essentially. So a lot of what is in the county emergency here involves utilities or assistance with rental to avoid eviction, that sort of thing. But the local DHS office looks to the general fund when somebody doesn't qualify or for state assistance.
In the
from
worst
state.
worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
All right. So this has remained relatively stable over the years.
Relatively stable. Yeah, it's been this same budget for many years. I can't tell you how many.
Do John Anderson or Vicky Wolberg get associated with any of this?
Not to my knowledge, no.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Oh, thank you. I'm on the wrong thing here. The 72,000 has been, you said, consistent for years, but the actual the actual expenditures have run lower than that, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So we're putting the money in there, but year after year,
We
that
don't
amount
necessarily
hasn't.
spend it all. Some years, if you go back, I'm sure the emergency needs might be closer to the 48 versus, well, you can see in 16 it was close. The per diems, you know, and the membership dues are, yeah, they're totaling a little bit less than the 18.
And the per diems is pretty set.
Yeah, mileage, it's $35 a meeting, depending how many meetings they.
So the amount that's in here is not based on what the actual cost or estimation of the cost is, if it runs different, because we know what their per diem is and we know how often they meet.
Yeah, depending on how many meetings they have each year, or each month, sometimes they have more than one meeting. And depending on who's on the board, mileage can change a little bit.
Okay, it's just, it seems consistently like 20,000 off, which is 20,000 is not a lot of money, but percentage of this budget, it is a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, somewhere between 15 and 20. Yeah.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I see Commissioner Drollet waving, but he's not listed on speakers here.
Just to follow up
Commissioner
on,
Drollet.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on Commissioner Kleinfeld's comment, why don't we just cut the budget?
We certainly could. I mean, I mentioned that internally today. It was like, I looked at this and I said, well, you know, maybe we leave it for 18, look at it for 19. We're not spending all of it. You know, now that also then would allow for more emergency needs.
But if
No.
there's that many new emergency needs that it's unprecedented in past years, you guys come back to us and say, we've had unexpected emergency needs, and I'm sure we'd
Certainly
be,
could do that.
you know, willing to look at that. But just seems like an easy
Yeah.
one. I mean, just we should kind of budget close to what we anticipate actual needs are likely to be.
The budget's a plan, but I'm not going to disagree with you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We can argue about this during finance?
I'm not trying to pick an argument. so-
Fair enough. Do we have a motion to receive and file? Because that's what we're doing today. Motion by Kraft, support by Drollet. All in favor, please vote. All opposed, please vote. Thank you. Now then, thank you very much. Steve, next on the hit parade, community mental health.
Yeah, I'll just do a very brief overview. Very complicated fund. John Kinch and some of his folks are here. We'll be able to discuss it in much more detail. You'll see the budget is going down about $17 million. I think, you know, it's Medicaid cuts particularly. There's a large decrease in supplies and services, which I think John can, that's all tied in with the Medicaid revenues and the cuts in those things. And that's really what's going on here. I don't think they have any new position requests. The general fund contribution actually is going down about $56,000. That's been pretty consistent the last few years, around $4 million. It's about 3.994 for 2018. But really the guts of the program are Medicaid cuts is I'm sure Mr. Kinch will address.
All right, thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, Mr. Kinch.
Good afternoon.
You don't look happy.
Mr. Chairman, it's always nice to see you and the board here. My opportunity to be able to provide an overview of our budget, and before I do that, I have to thank you once again as being, having a governing role with community mental health, your voice, working with the Community Mental Health Board, with the legislature. We had a very difficult financial year last year. serious challenges to being able to deliver consumers services, and I very much appreciate your voice and what you were able to do to help us out with some of our funding challenges. I think we're past the majority of that hardship, a little bit more to come, but certainly, you know, far beyond where we were a year ago at this time. I provided 2 pretty hefty documents for your review. A little bit challenging for me to know where you're at on your electronic software there, but I did provide for you a state fiscal year validation of performance measures. And if it's all the same to you, and if you really don't mind, I'm going to pass through that and just skip that for right now. It is an attribution of some of where Macomb County Community Mental Health as a PIHP stands relative to the success in our contracts, our compliance with the contracts with the state of Michigan. And if you peruse through that, I think you're going to see it's pretty much flawless. It also provides the number of statistics relative to the consumers that are served, but I also caution you too, when you look at that document, the statistics that you see in the consumers served, that is only Medicaid, and it is only for 1 quarter. So at large, we also have Healthy Michigan plan in there. We have general fund consumers that we provide services to, and then we also have the Medicaid population. So we're servicing about 14,000 people a year just in through supports and services. The document that I passed around, I'd like to go to that one first. I just passed around. It's part of the my strategic plan, and I've given you the entirety of the strategic plan. I'm going to give it to you before I give it to the Community Mental Health Board, and they're going to get it in a couple hours yet tonight. But the one document that has the circles and it's entitled Capitated Shared Risk Shared Savings Contract. I just passed it out. Everybody's got that. I think it's a good illustration for everyone to understand where the money comes from and what we're looking at relative to community mental health. We really have 7 large contracts that constitutes our business. On the left side, CMS is the Center for Medicaid and Medicaid Services, Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's the federal government, and they issue dollars. Those are Medicare Advantage plan dollars. They issue those dollars to those 5 integrated care organizations. They're listed across there, AmeriHealth and Health Alliance Plan. Those monies, they subcontract with Macomb Community Mental Health. We're part of that pilot demonstration region, a federal demonstration, and we get those Medicare and Medicaid dollars, and I'll run through the numbers for you really quick too, as part of the demonstration to our agency. Also on the right-hand side of that graph, you'll see CMS again, where the majority of all our Medicaid dollars, about $180 million of our Medicaid, flows through the CMS. It goes to the Department of Health and Human Services, and then obviously we're a downstream contractor with the Department of Health and Human Services. And then just below that too is the State General Fund. So not to take that off the table, we have $8.1 million in State General Fund. So we're Region 9, we're one of 10 in the state of Michigan. We're a standalone, as you understand that. So we're the PIHP, where we contract services out. We're also a CMHSP, where we deliver services. I think that provides you a good overview of how community mental health is operated. If you go on to the strategic plan, and again, I'm at odds because I don't know what page to refer you to. Probably my fault that I didn't number them, huh? But there's the goals and the objectives in my strategic plan. Can everybody find that?
Yes, page 155.
Okay, that'll make it. So on 155, the number 1 goal that we need to adhere to is compliance with the 1915 BC waiver program. It's also referred to the Healthy Michigan program, the Flint 1115 water waiver, and the substance abuse and community mental health grant programs. That all in itself is our Medicaid contract. So if you perform well enough the previous year, you get offered another contract to engage in business in your subsequent year. We spend about $9 million in administration of that Medicaid contract. So for me to sit here and try to describe for you the extensiveness of that contract, I just maybe I'll hand you the contract. It's lengthy. And so that is our Medicaid contract, and we continue to perform pretty well within that contract according to the state standards. So the number 1 goal, if you're going to be in business and you want to continue to be in business next year, you better adhere to your contract that you currently have in your hand in front of you. And so that's my number 1 goal, is to make sure all of my administrative staff adhere to the Medicaid contracts, all of the deliverables, the compliance regulations that are all within. The second goal there is The general fund contract. Let's not forget our indigent consumers. Many of those who've never got into Medicaid, they're indigent and they need health care as well too. We are the public safety net. The third goal there is the My Health Link demonstration. There's only a few of us in the state of Michigan that are doing this. It's a big deal. For absence of better words, I like using that word though. It's a big deal that we are engaged with those 5 integrated care organizations. We're integrating Medicare and Medicaid services together as part of a federal initiative. And then the fourth goal that I have there is compliance with the substance use disorder contract and all of the block grants that they have available to themselves as well too. You might want to make a side note that on October 30th, this coming October 30th, MISD at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a community forum addressing, at least speaking to some of the opioid crisis that's going on. And we're also going to review many of these contracts and these block grants, what they offer up. If you go to page 5, it's, you know, it's maintain financial solvency. That's the other thing, as much as you have the contract, how is it that we go about maintaining financial solvency? Probably many of the commissioners have received phone calls from constituents where their service has been cut. It's through an ongoing effort of utilization management, you know, attention to the dollars. I've reduced a lot of staff. You know, I've got about 60 vacancies. There's a number of things that we've done, try to correct for the shortcoming of revenue. We'll fix that though. So the Medicaid, the first line is the 146 is Medicaid. Second line is about 18 million in Healthy Michigan Plan. General fund is about 8 million. The collective, these are all projective costs or projective allocations and what we expect in the way of cost. We want to be cost neutral at the end of the year. So Aetna, Molina, Health Alliance Plan, Michigan Complete Care, and AmeriHealth, we pick up about $2 million there in that initiative. Remaining of all of those block grants that are related to substance use prevention treatment. And so we're going to continue to actively pursue dollars with the Community Mental Health Board through the legislature. As you all know, we got about $5 million last year thanks to our collective efforts of everybody, including the community and the consumers who were hurt and had a voice. My thanks to Commissioner Kraft as well, that we were able to get $5 million, you know, in allocations from the Speaker of the House, and we're going to go after another $7.5 million to see if we can get that $12.5 million that we need. So we're going to continue to maintain financial solvency. If you turn to item number 6, goal number 6, you know, better, greater, expanded care with the HMOs. Those are the 8 HMOs that are in the metro region, Detroit, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb region, that are part of an initiative. We want to engage in yet another integrated care initiative. You're integrating behavioral health and physical health care. So that's a goal. Number 7, I'm really not going to speak to, but it's an important goal. Number 8, not necessarily something I want to speak to right now, but an important goal for us. Number 9, CMH authority. Many times I've been before this commission here and people say, how come you aren't like them? How come Macomb County isn't like the other counties? There are 83 counties in the state of Michigan. There are 46 community mental health programs. Okay, we're one of 46 community mental health programs. 42 community mental health programs are authorities, and there's 4 that are not authority. 3 of them are a little tiny. I probably have more money in my pocket than they have in the way of a general fund budget. But we are not an authority. The Community Mental Health Board has never wanted to take up that position. The last time we did a comprehensive study on the pros and cons of community mental health authority was in 1997. So all I'm saying in this proposal to the CMH board tonight is let's take a look and either hire a health management agency or a legal firm to do an analysis of what is the risk of inaction, of not becoming an authority, or the risk of action if you do become an authority. What does the future health place and the future marketplace look like? Do they want to contract with government, or do they want to contract with someone else who's non-government? So far, we've been pretty successful with that, but we have to ask that. What's in the best interest of the 140,000 people who are enrolled in Medicaid? So I think we do this comprehensive study. And I'm not suggesting I go to the board saying we need to become an authority. That's not what I'm saying at all. It takes a resolution by the Board of Commissioners. There'd be a lot of community education. I think that there's, I believe, minimally 3 public hearings that need to be had if we were going to go that direction. And it would take a year to become an authority, and everything would stay in place for another year. So I really, at this point in time, can honestly say is it in our best interest to be an authority? I don't know that. That's why I think we should conduct a study. And before I get my cart before my horse, I got to find out how much it's going to cost me for the study. Can I afford, $80,000 right now for a study? Probably. Could I afford $480,000 right now? Probably not. So I don't have the construct for what I'm going to ask for the engagement firm to look at what I really want, because we would have to take over human resources. We'd have to take over legal. We'd have to pay our own checks. We'd be able to own property, those types of things. So I'm only going to go to the Community Mental Health Board. Now is the time, 20 years later, to do a risk analysis, pros and cons of authority, non-authority, and, if we act, the risk of acting and the risk of inacting. So now is just the time to do it one more time. And then the last thing, number 10 is My Health Link, the big deal. And then number 11, there's a lot we don't know about the future. If anybody can sit here and tell us what the federal government and what President Trump has relative to Medicaid coming to Michigan, we don't know that. I'm pretty certain, though, or a lot of us may believe it's going to be block grant money. And if it's block grant money, the federal share of being able to carry any risk with our consumers is going to be gone. It's going to be born to the states, and everybody, it's going to be like a piece of Swiss cheese, because everybody's going to take their little knife and want a piece of that Medicaid money for us. And it's not going to be as much Medicaid dollars as we have now. I also know, or have reason to believe, well, let me move on to the second point there under number 11, is that the legislature has, we all knew about the governor's budget a few years ago, 298, and the legislator wants these pilot programs to be trying to define the future. That's just a slow train out of nowhere. That's going to take forever, so I'm just not even worried about that. But we don't know what that's going to offer up. I believe there's going to be considerable reductions based on future or previous gas tax initiatives that have occurred, where the state general fund is going to see about a $4.5 billion reduction of their $10 billion that's going to be redirected, as it has been already legislatively mandated, to roads and infrastructure. And so we don't get much Medicaid or general fund dollar now. There will even be less general fund dollars. So we have to be very savvy on how we purchase services, and that we make sure that those services are triple aim. They have cost, quality, and outcome. And if they're not affordable, then we need to outsource them and see if someone else can purchase those services. If we can afford them and we're really good at providing them, those are where the community mental health programs, stands to live a long life. I think we have 2 or 3 years to really sort some of this out. I hate to always say it's about money, but it's always about money. And the consumers are very much in need of ongoing support. Their hardships are incredible. So I'm coming to the Board of Commissioners again here with the budget, and the thanks of Steve, that we need the $1.7 million in the required Medicaid match. That's in there, and that stays the same, $1.7 million in Medicaid match that comes from the county. The 2.2 in drawdown that, has been relatively consistent from you along the way, and that number really hasn't gone one way or another. We also asked the county executive, and the board supported us last year for $287,000 to maintain the Macomb County Crisis Center. It's not the Community Mental Health Crisis Center, it's our Macomb County Crisis Center. We took those monies last year. We hired 9 people. Phones were answered all the time. And then also another $264,000 for GF support, because we took such a big GF cut. So in all of that, I think our budget is pretty much cost neutral, if not up maybe $45,000. That's my overview. Thank you for giving me your time, and I'm going to invite my Chief Financial Officer, Cynthia Mack, up here. I've had 4 CFOs in 4 years, and Cynthia has weathered the storm for a year so far. So the budget is not easy. It's very complex, and I'm going to ask her to support me in any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Cynthia? Are there any questions? All right. Do we have a motion to receive and file? We have a motion to receive and file by Drollet, support by Kraft. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, I just want to, I want to thank you. When you came back to see us in March, it seemed like it was a crisis that we were dealing with. And, I appreciate you thanking Commissioners Kraft and Toko and anybody else, and Commissioner Duge that was involved, and the rest of us. I think your hard efforts, being up in Lansing quite a bit and doing what you had to do so that we can maintain our independence, admirable, and I do really appreciate that. One question on the study for the authority. How much of a priority do you think that is for you? I mean, on your thing, you had it number 9 or 10. You know, sometimes I look at things like what's first, what's second, you know. Do you think it's something that we should do here after 20 years of looking at it last time? Because one of the things I heard when we were in that crisis mode is that we might be able to save ourselves if we became an authority. And now that we're, you know, kind of okay, is it something that we may have to look at if it comes to be a crisis again?
Well, it's a very interesting question, a great question, but it has a lot of different answers to it because, from the county perspective or from the office of the county executive and the board of commissioners, do you want larger government or smaller government?
Right.
Do you want $200 million flowing through your county purse? Does that affect your bond rating? All of those types of things I think would be taken into consideration. Is there greater value for us or for the consumers? What's going to be in the best interest of the consumers? And that's where we all need to be. Is it going to be better interest of the consumers to be an authority, and then the board of commissioners still, appoints a board before the authority, and then it's retained in Macomb County. Let's just hypothetically say that Molina gets, a larger share of the Medicaid dollars in the coming years, and Molina says, I really don't want to deal with county government, so I'm just going to ask Oakland County to take care of Oakland and Macomb counties together. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
And so really it's the wishes of the board. I don't want to get ahead of the board because I'm not saying we should do that, but I think we need to be able to really have a comprehensive study. What is all the great value that, may offer or may not offer as a mental health authority, and then, what are the risks if we do or we don't. So
yeah, I think I get what I get your answer, and I think it's something that, you say if it's an $80,000 study or a $400,000 study, I think you should get this study. Do you know what I mean? I think I get it. You're not saying we should do this or the other, but we should have an analysis. And I do believe in getting data, and I do believe in getting an analysis, so that way we're in a better position in case this happens again, that we can act quickly on what's in the best interest for the consumers, as you said.
So if I could put the engagement together, I don't believe I'm going to go through a formal RFP for it, other than ask for a consulting firm to give me bids on what it is that I'm looking for, but I need to be pretty descriptive in what it is that I want them to do, so I can get fair bids across the board from everyone.
Thank you.
And then I would take it back to the board, saying, do you want to contract with an agent to do the engagement or not?
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you again for what you've done. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Or thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Next up, we have Commissioner Toko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, when you were here in March, there was a $12 million problem, and I understand that there was a $5 million fix. What happened to the other 7, and how does that affect the budget going forward? And how does that affect the issues of the risk corridor and the contract with the state?
That's it's a great question. And it gets really tricky, the answer, and I certainly don't want to put anybody off base or uncomfortable with it. The state recently allowed us to use Medicaid and Healthy Michigan funds and the savings from those funds and combine them, be able to use any savings from either one of those funds and combine them in our risk management strategy that we're going to put together next month. However, you cannot use those dollars to protect yourself or to cover another fund. So we have $6.3 million in extra monies through Healthy Michigan. We can show that as far as our strategy, along with the $5 million that we got from the legislature as a holder. We can show that to be fully funded in our capitated risk plan, our capitated risk on October 1st, but we can't use those Healthy Michigan should we run into a Medicaid problem. But they let you do it that way. So it's kind of like you can blend your dollars, but you can't use your dollars accordingly. So, and we've discussed this with the Community Mental Health Board. So there is a necessity to go after that other $7.5 million. So Cynthia has a balanced budget for next year, this year, and for this year going into next year. But we need to pick up what is artificially inflated by the 6.3 in Healthy Michigan plan dollars. Say that right?
So what is the plan for doing that?
The plan for procuring the dollars?
Yes.
I've been working with the Community Mental Health Board, and sometime within the next 3 weeks, what we will do is I already wrote a letter to the Speaker of the House, Leonard, about the $12 million that we needed, and through the efforts of many of the Community Mental Health Board and the Board of Commissioners and some of our lobbyists, we got the $5 million. We've heard that verbally that Speaker Leonard said he would offer up another $7.5 million in this fiscal year, but it's a matter of working with the legislature, the Macomb delegates. And so what I'm going to do in short order here is put together a white paper with a cover letter back to a white paper with the hardship relative to some of the challenges and some of the human effect that's occurred here in Macomb County. I'm going to review that tomorrow morning with my Citizens Advisory Committee. I'll review it with the board tonight. I'll bring a white paper back to the board with another cover letter to Speaker Leonard, CC'd to the Macomb House and Senate delegation, asking for reconsideration or not reconsideration, a continuation of that $7.5 million. And they're in the session until the week before Christmas. So I would think along about the 1st of November, they'll get my letter. And at that point in time, I'll bring all the Macomb delegate up to speed too on the need for the dollars. And then we're also going to do a community blast that all of those families who have been affected, that we're going to ask them to start showing up at the coffee shops and wherever the House and Senate delegates are having their community coffee clutches and those types of things, to continue a voice and say, here's the face, here's how it hurt me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question, the jail diversion program. We had 1.5 positions open, that was the request. It's not necessarily that this board turned it down, but executive didn't recommend it. Are you going to try to get that again, or is there any push to get that jail diversion program manned up?
I believe from what our understanding is currently and what we've heard of the possible changes out with jail diversion, we're comfortable with the 1.5 at this point.
Okay, are you pushing it at the for the executive level? Because we didn't turn it down, the executive actually didn't recommend it.
I believe we'd want some additional internal conversations with how that program is going, and again, within the whole county. I think we've heard some different stories as far as what the direction is.
Right.
So in order for us to pursue it appropriately, we'd want to take that into consideration.
All right, fair enough. But, because my understanding is it's still not recommended by the executive. If it was up to me, then I'd love to do it, but we do have systems here. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. The shortfall, or the $5 million you receive, is for what year?
It's a placeholder. They gave us state general fund dollars, and it's a placeholder to be thrown at Medicaid, not to be used, and it's for fiscal year 18. It'll be used as revenue for fiscal year 18, the coming fiscal year, as a placeholder to help us with our internal services fund.
And then the $7 million that you're short is for what area?
It would also be used for, see, the concept, if we can get those $7.5 million, then we will be able to maybe soften some of our utilization management practices, and that's where the legislature understands is that we have been so aggressive in utilization management and cutting services. If we get some added dollars, then we ought to be able to soften those.
So you're saying for 2018, not 17? You're saying you're fully funded for everything you got going on in 17? You're not amending the budget from what was originally proposed?
We're going to close out 16, 17, which is already gone. You know, we will know definitively. It takes about 5 months for us to close our books. So we don't need any more additional dollars for 17. But for 18, beginning the 1st of October here, we're still looking for that $7.5 million.
Okay. Above and beyond from what you're receiving from the general fund now, are you asking for any more county dollars, general fund dollars to assist in any of this, or is this just strictly you're going to the state?
Correct. It's only the county dollars we're asking about are just for the 264 on the GF that you gave us last year, county match, and then not match, county dollars. And then on the crisis center. So it's about 500, same 500,000, they're about the same as you gave us last year. Okay. Nothing more.
So your fiscal year 18 starts when?
Started 11 days ago, October 1st.
11 days ago. in 18, and then you're still $7 million short, and you're projected to continue the program with the hope that you're going to get that $7 million? Is that what I'm understanding?
Our budget is balanced, but we're still that money short, yes.
Okay, and I apologize, maybe I just don't get it.
Mhm.
So in 2018, which started 11 days ago, you're $7 million short of accomplishing the budget that you're, or,
It's the risk reserve. You know, that's why it's complicated.
Okay.
It's the internal services fund.
all
We
right,
go,
let me back up and ask this question. There was monies cut because we were doing a service a little bit different than the way the state wanted us to do the service, or the federal government wanted us to do the service, correct?
I wouldn't agree with that, no. I stand pretty convicted on the way we were doing it is the way we should have been doing
Let
it.
me
yeah.
rephrase the question.
Okay.
We are providing a service that they, not that you don't agree with,
Yeah.
that they don't agree with, and we were cut several $million, correct or incorrect?
I think the school's still all that. No, I'm not trying to be argumentative. The state has not come up with a definitive declaration that we've been doing it any different than anybody else.
Okay.
It was state average.
If
and they-
everybody agreed that you've been doing it the right way all the way along, you wouldn't need to ask for the additional money, correct? So if they said, nope, here's all the money that we cut back because you're correct, we wouldn't have to go ask for the $5 and the $7 million?
I think there's a perception there based on the
Okay,
departments.
listen, all due respect.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just want to talk about the part. If you were made whole by the service you were performing, that you explained to me the last time that they didn't agree, but you were going to argue and explain to them why you were correct, that amount of money that they didn't give us, is this the money that you're trying to get that extra $7 and $5 million?
A portion of it, you know, as you know, we lost a whole lot more than that over the period of 2.5 years, so it's a portion of it, yes.
What percentage would the dollars be if you had to quantify it? Out of 100%, would it be 90%, 80%?
The number I have on the top of my head, the number that will lose, Macomb County CMH will lose in the way of Medicaid dollars, not Healthy Michigan, B3 state plan dollars, the majority of our dollars, from April 1st of 2016 through September 30th of 18, during that 2.5 year period, $37 million, 17%.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. We were going back and forth with that originally. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Toko.
John, where are we at on the crisis center? Is it now at a break-even point financially, or how did last year shape up with that? Do you know yet?
Before, what we had done is we were going to try to turn that over to a voluntary service agency, or a voluntary, volunteers answering the phone. And in light of the fact that the general fund dollars are going to continue to go away, and everybody else has a call center, every HMO out there, Molina, they have their all call center, their own. They're not going to ask for us to provide a call center. It was the Community Mental Health Board's interest to preserve someone on the phone, and so the deficit, the 200, I'm just have to take a shot at it, about half of what it would take to run the crisis center, we're picking up through general fund dollars. The other half would be picked up through the contribution from the county. And I have to be pretty close with that, but I don't know the exact numbers. Though it's running, it's fully operational at this point in time. We have a live voice on there 24/7, 365.
Didn't, maybe some of the commissioners who were here a couple of years ago, didn't the board vote to put more money into the crisis center? Wasn't that a budget amendment that we did?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's something.
Is Smigiel
You
still
did.
here?
You gave us more money last year. That was the first year.
Okay, and was that used? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the 287,000.
Okay.
So we've fully used that, and we're asking for that. It ran out on the 1st of October, so we're asking for a continuation for next year too.
Okay, that's where I misunderstood. Thank you. And then just one more quick question. What about the UBHC? Is that, how is financially, how is that operating? Is that at a break-even point?
That's a great question to know. The UBHC has been a considerable drain on our general fund dollars, and to the point that we're probably projecting a $2 million overrun on general fund for that program. So we've done a lot of redesigning in the year that we've been trying to get it to grow roots. You know, it's interesting that, you know, we have if I can just take a minute to describe it, we have a program that's open 24/7, 365. We market it to everybody, try to get urgent or emergent people into our urgent behavioral health clinic, and we cannot get any traffic or minimal, I mean literally minimal traffic coming through the door in the afternoon and evening hours. Meanwhile, St. John, Henry Ford, and every ER in the county will have 20 to 30 behavioral health people come through their emergency rooms. Some of them get stuck for days this coming weekend, but I can't get them to the urgent care center.
What do you, and for the commissioners who don't know or who are new, can you just explain what that is and what the concept is of the UBHC? Because I think that there are some who may not know about it.
So if you're, I don't know, maybe you're familiar with the Common Ground over in Oakland County for a long time. They had, what we modeled was an urgent behavioral health care program, and it's right across from the Macomb Intermediate School District. It's open there 24 hours a day. Someone comes in, ambulance, a police, car. They walk in, brought in by a friend. They walk in. We ask them if they have any contraband, drugs, guns, whatever. Lock them up. Here's the key, because we don't check them for that. Just take your stuff and lock it up, but you can't bring it into our facility and come on in. And so then we're, positioned, instead of being in an emergency room where you have doctors and nurses and lots of bright lights. If you're coming in, you're traumatic. If you have a traumatic incident going on, you've got some major depression, some psychosis, you can be met with a psychiatrist, you can be met with nurses, caseworkers, social workers, peers that have also been mentally ill, who, peer support staff. And so the whole paradigm and the whole dynamic is different, whereas you're treated with behavioral health professionals who can do the same or treat you suited to condition comparatively to being in an emergency room. And so and for us to be able to work with multiple consumers, we have a capacity for 12 rooms for adults and 3 rooms for children, isolated in a different section of the building, isolated for children. Then they can come in there. We could help them with, desensitization, whatever their mental illnesses, whatever is going on at that point in time. Provide them maybe with linking, supporting to caseworkers, supports coordinators, their staff, their psychiatrists, their Medicaid card, and then divert them without them having to go to acute psych admission. That was the whole premise behind it. If you go in the emergency room, there's probably a likelihood you have something really serious going on and you're going to get admitted. You don't ever go to an urgent care room thinking you're going to get admitted, I think. And so our purpose was to treat consumers in the community with people who are sensitive to mental health conditions and substance abuse conditions, and to redirect them whenever and wherever possible back to the community without going to acute psych. That was the whole premise.
And the financial premise is that we would be using our Medicaid dollars to the center and not to the emergency rooms, correct?
Right.
So if it's operating at a $2 million loss or a drain, is it your plan to continue to operate it, or are you? I mean, where are you going with it at this point?
Well, we've gone to the Community Mental Health Board and let them know that, for the time being, the evening hours and the midnight hours aren't working. So I think we're down to, it closes at 8 o'clock, 8 or 9 at night, and opens, 8 or 9 in the morning. So it's open about 12 hours a day. And we're do some pre-admission screening, and we're changing a little bit of the design of it. Still takes in walk-in patients and still does urgent care. We're also taking consumers as soon as they're discharged from the hospital, instead of going to Easter Seals or someplace where they may not get an appointment for 10, 12 days. We bring them right over to the urgent care and do a comprehensive intake and bring them into our system. So we've seen a really big increase in immediate aftercare from acute psych over to our urgent care center. But we have to make it cost neutral. And Cindy can describe it, but if you have 100 people that are coming through, 50 are Medicaid and 50 are like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, commercial insurance, or indigent, you can take 50% of your dollars and you have to pay for it out of Medicaid. Your other 50% you have to pay out of general fund dollars, or unless we have contracts with Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and every other commercial payer that's out there. We're trying to continually obtain those contracts. I think within time it's still going to expand itself. I don't think it's going to go away. It's just, it's a challenge to be able to market it and bring people through. We've had billboards. Maybe you've seen billboards out there. We have radio advertisements that are out there. We're on Facebook. You know, every social medium that we can get out there trying to market UBHC. It's just a stickler. We cannot get the traffic to come through there.
So it's no longer a 24/7, 365 operation?
No, believe on October 1st, it went from about 9 to 9, 9 in the morning till 9 at night, right about that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
That's disappointing, thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, John. You kind of answered the questions I was going to ask that Kathy just mentioned. Are we having where do a lot of the patients that, I mean, obviously they bring them to the hospitals. It must be police and ambulance services. Are we real well connected with them? And are they aware of, I mean, I imagine they are. I think I remember you talking about it. Is there a disconnect though? I mean, as to them, not wanting to route them to you, or are they just, I mean, it seems like that's where a lot of the traffic would come from, especially in the later times and in the middle of the night. What's that? Is there an issue with the public services like that, not knowing or not?
I think some of it is, we've done a diligent effort on our end, to train first responders and get out to the local police departments, and to get them to become familiar with our program, to give them brochures, to invite them in on the tours, the openings when we have them. And, I think it's going to be more a matter of their policies relative to how they want to make sure that they, follow proper protocol based on their employment agencies. So if MedStar says, look, you have somebody with some type of acute crisis and, there's any medical, complication, they may have to go straight to an ED. We can't medically clear somebody. That's one of the challenges. We can't medically clear somebody. Sheriff Department doesn't use it. We know that. I don't mean to say that out loud again, but the sheriff.
That's what we're interested in, is finding out who's using it, who's not, and maybe being able to ask them why. And then when you talk about clearing medically, what about when they clear medically through the hospital? Are you connected with them as the next resource? So, okay, you got to leave. We don't have any real medical problems. Here's where you should go.
Yep.
I mean,
we do have that connection. Matter of fact, we have a staff person at Henry Ford on 19 Mile Road who actually works for us and works with Henry Ford, but they're our employee. We've implanted that person, per se, into Henry Ford, and we do bus them, or even if we have to put them in an ambulance, which is expensive, that's borne to the consumer, those costs, but to come from the emergency room once they're medically cleared back to our urgent care center.
Seems like a problem we have in this county, and probably every county, with great services that we provide and offer, but the lack of being able to connect that to the end consumer. And it's just, I mean, whether it's veterans or senior services or this, it's just a problem that I know everybody's working hard at it, but sooner or later we got to figure this out, because we offer too many great services in this county that are, just right by people that need them the most. So I appreciate you guys trying this good effort.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, we have a motion to receive and file. Please vote.
Thank you.
I was sure we had one. Yeah, I think Commissioner Kraft made a motion and Commissioner Drollet supported it. As opposed to Commissioner Romano, who will make the next motion. Did we vote? Okay, number 10, correspondence. What every veteran should know, receive and file. We have a motion by Brown, support by Romano. All in favor, please vote. Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, number 11, new business. We have new business from Commissioner Leonetti. Commissioner Myjack.
Yeah, so commissioners, I had an email today from Mike O'Mara from our office. He attended last Thursday the Michigan Municipal League. I'm not sure if any commissioners went to that, but it was very interesting and informative in terms of the notes I received from Mr. O'Mara. So I've asked Mike O'Mara to see if we can get someone from Michigan Municipal League, MML, come to this board and give us that presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thanks. I just want to note that Martha T. Berry's Foundation, second annual foundation dinner will be held next Wednesday, the 18th, at Zuccaro's in Chesterfield. They're $50 each. The tickets are special awards for the honorees. The proceeds from this event benefit projects and improvements at Martha T. Berry Medical Care Facility. And I just want to say a bit of good news. I don't know if anyone heard this from Martha T. Berry, just kind of a feel-good story. The laundry staff found $2,150 in a sock that was mixed in with donated clothing. They all got together, reported it, and found the owner and gave it back to him. So it was just nice news rather than all the bad news we hear. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucido. Bravo.
Yes, my new business was going to be thank you for all the well wishes and the very generous gift. We had a great wedding. We had a great time, and thank you all.
Why
Much
should
appreciated.
you have it any better than the rest of us? While everybody's talking new business, we had the veterans meeting last week. I think it was Tuesday at Macomb County. Very, very well received. Laura did a terrific job presenting, and there were a couple of other presenters. Went over very, very well, and we've got to be very proud of the people that took part in it and sponsored it. So I'm very happy to mention that. And then last Thursday, we had a memorial for ex-board chair Nancy White at Fern Hill. That went very, very well, and Commissioner Toko came by and gave a resolution from the board, and Commissioner Smith was there. Or a proclamation. Thank you. One last thing from Commissioner Smith.
Speaking of events, last night I went to the Fan Fall Fest, and if you guys have never attended this, it's a big event at Penna's. There was 1,000 people there. This fan started 10 years ago in Linda Davis's basement, and this year she was invited to the White House to talk about narcotics and the problems. This event last night was probably one of the nicest events I've been to. There's a ton of galas that go on, but the emotion and you can see the good that they do, right? I mean, with everything that they presented last night, it was amazing. I'd highly recommend you attending this next year. It was really worth going to.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Brown.
Last night out in Romeo, we brought the director of the DIA out, Salvador, and gave a presentation. His director cuts to the Starkweather Gallery. It had a good crowd there. It filled that place right up. It was about almost 100 people in there. Gave a good talk. Talked about the DIA and what they're doing and what changes they've made, as well as the financial issues that they've had and where they're at now. And gave, as well as interesting talk about the art and the history of the museum and their future plans going forward. It was interesting and well worth it. And they offer those opportunities to any of you, if you have any particular place in your community that you'd like to have him come out and speak. They're looking for places to do that. It's a good positive thing to do for your community, and it's definitely show them the north end of the county. He thought the road stopped at 26 Mile Road, but we rebuilt the bridge so we could get over to the other side of the river, and he was happy. So.
All right.
Oh,
very good.
very
Thank
quickly,
you.
very quickly.
Wrong finger, but
I already
if you
voted,
haven't
too.
voted yet, please vote on.
Hello?
No? Okay.
You better, I've been
No,
sitting here listening to all of you talk.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It'd take me 2 seconds.
Not a problem.
The first contested race anybody can remember who's serving on the MAC board right now. I am the second vice president, but it was the first contested race that anybody could remember. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? What is the voting for? No, not yet. Okay, any other new business from commissioners? Any new business from staff? Number 12, public participation. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak, going once, twice, thrice, seeing and hearing none, that's closed. We have a motion by Leonetti, support by Grolette. All in favor? Please vote. Thank you very much. Nice job. See you tomorrow. Wrong finger.